Hey everyone, I think we're live. Yeah, I think so. Chinkai-chan. Those of you who haven't watched me before, you might catch some audio in the background. I never believed that I'm actually doing this the right way because I made a mistake once a long time ago. Yeah, I'm doing it right. All right, shut up. Shut up, you. Shut up, me. All right, and I'm guessing my little Discord bot didn't. Discord bot did not do what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to share a link out to my Discord, and it didn't do it. So we're going to do it real quick right now. All right, that's there. Cool. So welcome to the channel. Appreciate you stopping by today. So to give a little context to what we're doing, a while ago, actually I can bring this up on my website, I decided to start something that's been on my list for a while, which I guess I'm calling, hold on, I can't even spell my own name, which I call the Community Cloud Challenge, Weekly Cloud Challenge. I don't know, I pick something different every time I talk about it, but basically what it is, if you are interested in the quick 1,000-foot view summary, whatever, just go ahead and drop a link in the chat. So the goal is on my Discord, brianmm.chat, where you can go to in your browser to get to it directly. We are going to start doing these weekly cloud challenges, and I decided to go with Azure to start off with because I'm more familiar with AWS and I want to get something out of it. So we're just gonna figure out how to learn to do some of this stuff with Azure technology, right? So the first challenge this month or week, or yeah, this first challenge we decided to do this week, or I decided to do this week because it's my show and I'm running it, is we're going to build some APIs in Azure. Now I have a GitHub repo that's been dropped onto the Discord channel that which is where I've been building an Azure function. But we're going to try and tackle 3 different ways of building an API in Azure. The first one we're going to do is I'm going to publish my Azure function, and we're going to hook that up to API management, which is their API gateway equivalent if you're familiar with AWS. It's a way to proxy requests from an API to some kind of backend service, which is pretty cool because you can proxy to different things. So if you have parts of the API running as Azure functions, if you have parts that might be running as Docker containers in AKS, or you could have them run in app services, which we're gonna get to. You can take those different requests and ping them off the different backend services, which is pretty cool. Now, the 3 that we're going to pick specifically today is we're going to pick the Azure function I'm going to try and publish out. We're going to try and build a full .NET Core API from scratch. I'm going to do it live, as in I don't even have the project started up yet. In fact, if you look at Visual Studio, which I have up here, it's literally just create a new project dialog. So we're going to go through that. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to build an API through what's called the Power Platform in Azure, and it's kind of a drag and drop workflow editor style thing. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. A couple of other things worth mentioning. If you are interested in getting involved with these Azure challenges or cloud challenges, like I said, brianmm.chat is the best way to do it, but you can also go to my website. I'll be posting a summary like this of kind of what the objective is and different approaches that we can take in order to execute on these challenges. This is going to go up once a week, probably on Sunday. We're going to run from like Sunday through Saturday, although Thursday probably is going to be the last day I'll really be able to contribute to it, which is why I'm doing the stream today. And then, yeah, you could do it this way if you want to actually get in and start chatting with other developers. We have a couple of people in the Discord that are interested that are actually doing it right now or have expressed interest in doing it. That's probably the best way to get involved. The repositories, I'm thinking once I'm done, I'm going to post these stream videos into another post on here along with all my repositories and everything. And then actually, if you go to my repositories, I'll show you something. CP Morrison Dev, I think is what it is. It's my profile. Yeah, so I've got in my repositories, I started a single repository for this weekly cloud challenge, which is the Azure function that I built this week. I'm going to store everything here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop this link into the chat as well. So if anybody's interested in following along over time, everything's going to come through here. As you can see, I have my 20.03 Azure API one that has started already. So this is the function, and this is what we're going to start off with and try and publish this thing to go live. Okay, so the last thing I want to do, or at least mention, is if you look at the top of my channel, I now have a donation goal. I'm trying to raise little funds by doing these things. If you are able and willing, any tips would be greatly appreciated. If you go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/BrianMMDev, I got to come up with a short link for that. There is a link in there where you can give a tip, and that money for this is going to go towards one of the things I'd like to do is get Spotify for the Discord or for the stream, because that's going to make things a little easier with selecting music and allow the community to kind of interact with some of the music that I'm going to put on the channel. And what is the last thing? Just help support the website. I mean, it costs money to run a website and to do these things, and it's time, whatever. So anything's appreciated. Never expected, but much appreciated. So. With that, let's get started. I'm going to fire up some music myself because I like music. And it's really loud. Turn that down a little bit. So let me know if the audio is a little too loud in the stream too. I'd appreciate it. Okay, so this is the code we wrote before. I'm going to kind of step through some of the things that we've done. I did take a bunch of screenshots on how to create an Azure function, so I will be posting that to my blog as well. But to start, we use Visual VS Code, and we use the Azure Functions. There's a plugin for it. Let me see if I can find the plugin. Let's see here. Extensions, Azure Function. Yeah, so this Azure Functions plugin. If you install this inside of VS Code, you'll see this option on the left-hand side, which is this Azure thing here. You have to sign into Azure, which I don't know that I have done yet, so we might be doing that right now. I do have an account, but you can click these buttons up here to create an Azure function, and when you do that, it walks you through like what language you want to use, where do you want to host it, what resource group do you want it in, etc. Actually, I might not do the resource group yet, but it creates this shell of an application here. So stepping through some of the core parts of this application, you'll see that I named mine Community Challenges or Cloud Challenges Azure API. So this is the main kind of core of the function that's going to be executed. And what I did is I wanted to do kind of like a random string generator thing. So I picked the months as strings, and I know some of the stuff is embedded in .NET, but I wanted to I just kind of wanted to show off how this stuff works. So we created an array of strings and just kind of set that up top. Let's see, here's the main core of the function that gets executed. Here's the name. We're using an HTTP trigger, so we can call this through an API of sorts. The methods, let's see, authorization level we'll go through a little bit later. We have get, we have post. I don't have any routes in here because I'm not doing any kind of routing, but if you wanted to build kind of like a full-blown API through here, you can add routes here, and it would, when you do that, when the request comes in, it based on your routing rules you have set up, it'll hit the correct function, but we're just keeping this totally vanilla. For now, HTTP request, this is the request object that comes into the function, and you can see there's a logger that's being added through dependency injection that is built automatically for you. So we have a month name. We're pulling out the name of the month. Actually, I have this here. I left this. I don't really care about this, but we're pulling out the number query parameter. So if you have month number equals whatever, it will try and pick that specific month for you. If you don't, let's see, here's where it's trying to parse it. It's going to parse, because this is going to come in as a string, so we have to parse this into an integer. So I created just an integer of 0 here, just kind of as a placeholder. And then we're going to go ahead and parse out the number of months. So if you put 1, it'll be January, but technically in the array, since arrays are 0 base, 0 is January, not 1. So I just set it up to subtract 1 from the number that's being added in. Coming down here, the response message is empty. This is just a string. Month number is if the month number is equal to 0, it will. I just realized it's going to be a bug because it's 0 by default. So if it can't parse it, or if you put 1, it's going to be 0. It's a bug, but it's not that big of a deal. We're still going to kind of get the point across. So if the month number equals 0, I have this helpers file that I added in here, which is a completely separate class. I put ranged PRNG, which if you don't know what that stands for, it's pseudo random number generator. Because it's not truly random, at least I don't think it is. I didn't go through the process of writing a full random number generator with tons of entropy in it, so I just use whatever the built-in random is. And I'm just returning something with a min and a max. So that is, I'm doing that up here, and ideally I'd like to handle that doing dependency injection, but I don't think Azure Functions supports that, or some form of that where you can use, I don't know the full extent of this, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do Azure, is because we're going to learn some stuff as we go. So you're getting from 0 to the month length is 11, so it's finding a random number, and if it's outside of the range, it's going to return a bad request and give you an error code. Otherwise, it's going to find the month and return it. So let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to open Postman. Postman is very, very helpful for testing APIs. If you're not familiar with the program, lets you modify HTTP requests and hit the send button, and you can see the responses that are generated directly to it. One of the neat tricks that I discovered recently is if you, hold on a second, get that out of there. I had some work stuff up. Hold on here for one moment, please. All right, there we go. So, okay, we're going to start up our function. So I think if you do .NET start run, actually I think I can F5 this. F5 in most of these Microsoft tools will kind of run. Yeah, you can see it's executing. I'll go ahead and pop this guy up here. So you can see it's building, or it looks like it's doing a clean on the former build, and it's going to rebuild the application. Make this a little bit bigger. There you go. Let this thing fire up and load. Some nice little pretty ASCII art there. Function working. This guy is going really slow. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to restart VS Code. We're not gonna do a whole lot of work in VS Code actually today, so it's not that big of a deal. Well, that's loading. I do know if you ever actually need settings, this local.settings.json is where you would put some of that stuff. I can't remember when you publish it out. There is a way where you can publish a settings file and have it handled that way. So okay, we're up and ready to go. So you can see it's showing me my HTTP functions that I have available to me are get and post. It shows me it's running on localhost 7071. So by calling this API, this endpoint here, it's going to go ahead and do what we expect it to. Excuse me. So let's go back into Postman, and you can see I was already testing this. I don't have anything in the query parameters because that's what we're checking. If we go back to our code, can I make this any bigger? Hey, I can. Look at that, Postman. Make it bigger. So you could see our Cloud Challenges Azure API. This matches inside right there. That's off screen. There we go. So you can see that's the same endpoint there. We have a GET request set up. If I go ahead and click send, it's going to go through and do it. And it says your month is May. So it randomly picked 4 is what it would have picked. It randomly picked 4 and it returned that because that's the index in the array up top. So you will also notice that based on this guy, I'm going to close that. I don't need that open right now. Here is where it's going to try and parse out the query parameter, and the query parameter of an API is where, if you've ever seen in here where they have question mark, API month, month number equals 1, right? So if I go ahead and hit send, say this is that bug that came up, is it's going to hit August. But if I click 2, or if I enter 2 and hit send, it's going to pick February because it's not resolving to 0. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. Very basic, super, nothing really fancy going on here. But we're going to actually try and take this and publish this up to Azure. So if I go to this Azure here, let me sign in and see. All right, I'm going to transition this out for a sec, because if it asks me to enter my password, I don't want to do that. Transition, there we go. You are now signed in and can close this page. Okay, so it didn't bother me, but can never can never be too safe. So theoretically, I would have signed in and it says, hey, you're signed in. Cool. So let's go back over to here. You can see I'm in a pay-as-you-go account. Let's see what we need to do to publish this. Deploy to function app. Let's click that. We'll create a new one. Enter a globally unique name for the function. So let's do Cloud Challenge. Let's see, what should we name this? What do I got? Cloud Challenges 20. If I could do numbers hyphens 20 dot, should do 20 underscore 03 Cloud Challenge. Okay, so that should be the name of the function. Letters, numbers, can't even do unders. 2003. There we go. That looks good. So we'll go ahead and hit enter there. Where do we want to deploy it? I'm in Chicago, so we'll do Central US. And it seems to be doing what I expect it to. If you can't see, probably because my video is in the way, down here on the right, on the lower right-hand side, it's saying it's registering providers. Can I make this bigger? No, this really doesn't help me out. I can't drag it out. So it's thinking. You can see a little bit of that loading bar as it's going across. That Godbleak, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. And it's still thinking. It says creating storage account. So storage account in Azure is where stuff is stored. Azure, it's kind of interesting from my learning. So we use Azure at work, but I'm not like the Azure guy. I traditionally more well versed in AWS, and AWS has different services for different things. So like you've got like your, geez, I can't remember what it is now. So S3 is for your blob storage. You use DynamoDB for object-based like document database kind of stuff. Your NoSQL, you can use like, man, I can't remember the term. The other thing, I got AWS certified last year, and then I joined a shop that does all Azure, so I forgot a lot of the terms. God, what is it? It's like, I know there's Aurora, AWS, SQL, RDS. Thank you. RDS, that's how I remember. RDS stands for something totally different than Microsoft World, for most remote desktop services. So, okay, so my little thing went away that says, you know, whatever. Oh, wait, it's doing something. It's thinking. I don't know what it's doing, but it's thinking. Store complete. It looks like it's building. It says deploying, check output. Failed to detect function host within 60 seconds. This might have been from earlier. Yeah, this is from earlier. So yeah, right here, this is the recent message. It says it's starting deployment. Let's head over to Azure while that's doing its thing, and let's see if we see anything new. This is the Azure Portal. You can try and navigate through this left-hand side and find stuff if you want, or you can do functions. Just search to the top. Let's see what we got here. There's my function we published. I don't know what it's doing. Says it's running. What does this guy say? Doesn't show anything. Read-only mode because you're running from a package file. Because I do know this, you can actually come right into Azure and write your functions in line if you want to. I recall I did do this once before where I wrote a PowerShell function. I did it directly in line in here, which is pretty cool because you can execute PowerShell code through like a serverless event-based programming model thingy, which is pretty neat. So from what I can tell in here, it looks like it's done. Let's go back into VS Code. Some of these first going to be displayed in the output window because they require an authentication token. Instead, you may copy them from the Azure functions. Querying triggers deployment successful. That's, I guess, a good thing. All right, hold on. Let's go back in here. So this is here. See if we can find a URL. Here's a URL. Let's copy that. Let's go over to Postman and see what we see. Postman. Let's create a new tab. Pop that guy in, and we'll do, I think it would be this challenges. We might have to put API in the end of it. We'll find out. So let's go ahead and hit send, see what it does. 404 not found. Let's try and throw an API in the front of there. Unauthorized. This is because of the way that the function, remember I said earlier I was going to talk a little bit about the authentication settings. So there is some kind of authentication layer on top of this where you need to generate some kind of key, if I remember. Let's see what we got here. See if I can find what I'm talking about. I don't know if I'm showing anything private on here. That's all right. I'm going to delete this all when I'm done anyway. These are like configuration settings. I don't think this is where we're looking. Can I change that thing? Let's go back into VS Code. Let's make a small change and we'll redeploy this thing. Let's see. If I go into authorization levels, see what authorization levels we have. Level dot anonymous function system user. So I had it set to function, and I think if it's set to function, that means that I can hook it up through other Azure services and it can authenticate that way. You know what? Let's leave that. We're not gonna touch it. I'm gonna undo what I was typing. Let's leave that alone. Because originally, when my idea was, I wanted to front all this stuff through API management. So let's go over to API management services, and let's create an API management service. These, I believe, do actually get rather expensive. So these are definitely going to be, I'm definitely going to disable this or delete it when I'm done. Let's see. Cloud challenges, that should be fine. Pay as you go. Resource group. Oh, so resource group, I didn't explain this earlier, a resource group is a logical collection of different things within Azure. One of the best examples I've seen before, or I've heard as was explained, is if you're handling billing inside of an organization, you can create a resource group for a department to hold all the stuff that's associated with that department so billing can be done. But when I was watching a video the other day on app services, they also suggested that you could use a resource group as a logical collection for various components of a whole application, because an application isn't always really like one piece of code. It's a bunch of different little components that all come together to make, the application, and that could be a way that you can organize that, which is a good idea. But we're going to leave this in just this regular resource group. I'm probably going to want to create a resource group for all of my cloud challenges, but that's fine for now. Location name, central organization name. I actually don't know what that is. Specify the name of organization for use in the developer portal and email notifications. Okay, we'll do brianmorrison.me because that's normally what I pick. Administrator email, that's fine. Developer, no SLA. Let's look at pricing here and see what we got. Develop unable to display pricing. Why? Oh, it's still loading. I'm going to give it a second to load up because I want to see what this pricing looks like. I would expect that the developer one would be like nothing or a couple cents, which is fine. It wouldn't bother me to pay that. But like, I have a developer account through work, and we get $50 credit every month to play around with Azure services, which is pretty cool through MSDN. But if you create something like the wrong way, it like chews through it, and your service just gets disabled. Kind of terrible. Come on. All right, whatever. We'll look this up later. Doesn't include SLA yet. It's fine. App Insights. We don't want to enable App Insights as a way for you to gather analytics and logging and stuff about your application. I don't necessarily care about that right now. Let's click on Automation Options to see what this gives us. This is for creating an ARM template. So I can talk to this a little bit. So, have you ever heard of the concept of infrastructure as code? That's where stuff like this comes into play. I think Ansible, Terraform, some of those platforms are used for that. AWS, it's CloudFormation, where you write these it's like a template. You can see here is JSON, and CloudFormation supports JSON as well. but it also supports YAML, which is a little bit more of a lightweight language descriptor markup language. Yet another markup language. So in this, basically, you're describing what you want deployed, and you can include this deployment template inside of your repository. So every time you push code, every time you push code up to a repository, it will it'll use this, it'll check, it'll verify it against your existing deployment, and it can correct any issues that might have occurred through like manual intervention, which is pretty cool. We do use these at work, and I have noticed, or at least I've heard, because again, I'm not really the Azure API or the Azure guy. I've come in here and played around with a bunch of this stuff, but checking an ARM template, especially through something like Azure DevOps, takes a while. I mean, it's one of the deployment tasks that we have in one of our repositories takes a couple of minutes for it to verify the template, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in a perfect world, if you want like your full CI/CD pipeline thing set up properly, you want those deployments to happen real quick. And this does tend to slow it down. So, I mean, for what it's worth, it might not be the best tool for doing what it's doing, but you can do that. Can I close this? This is one of the other interesting things. You can see the scroll bar on the bottom. You see how it's all the way off to the right. Azure uses something called like a blade. I think it's called a blade system, where everything kind of opens more to the right. So as things are opened up, it just kind of like starts populating out to the right. And if you ever want to go back, you just scroll off to the left. I'm going to click close here. And yeah, this goes off too. So everything seems to be in working order. Let's go ahead and create our API management service. And you can see on the upper right-hand corner, it says deployment in progress. Sometimes deploying out these services does take a little while because it's got to go and crawl and do a bunch of different things. So we're going to let this do its thing. Come on, I get impatient with this stuff. I want it to be done. 19, yeah, 19. I'm complaining. It's only been 19 seconds. That has been longer than 19 seconds because this timestamp says 8:56 and it says 8:59 on my computer. Oh, things are clicking and going away. I don't really want to move on to the next thing. I mean, I'm used to trying to like multitask. So like if something's going to take a while, I'll move on to the next thing. But I really want to kind of like be patient, let this thing do its thing. So while we're waiting, I don't know. We're going to wait. Status okay. We're almost done. Maybe. I just see things moving out of the like peripheral vision. Let's try and refresh, see what this does. Nope, nothing. Start time 8:50. It's almost 5 minutes in. Chilling here, not doing anything. How's chat doing today? Anything fun or cool, exciting? I have forgotten. I'm looking at some of my settings. I got hooked up on read only. I got hooked up on Mixer just recently. I don't know if I'll get anything out of it or anyone would join up, but I'm like, well, whatever new avenues there are out there, be pretty cool. I'm a pretty big Apple guy with at least all my mobile products. My desktop, I always use Windows. I don't know why. I like it better than Mac OS. I've been in IT for like, I don't know, forever. And I know all sorts of little tips and tricks and stuff to get around Windows that I don't know how to do on a Mac. So I don't necessarily like using a Mac. But with that said, I like Apple Music because it integrates with everything really nicely. But iTunes on Windows is pretty terrible. And I kind of, that's part of the reason why I want to eventually get a Spotify account for the stream, is because, of that, like trying to manage iTunes and hoping that it actually stays working is kind of a pain in the butt. But the playlist I got playing today is pretty good. All right, I'm not waiting for this thing anymore. I mean, as soon as I say it, it's probably going to finish, but I'm going to go into the multitasking mode. So we're going to, I'm going to start firing up the second part of this is, maybe we'll do while this is doing its thing. Since we got to stay in the Azure portal, we're going to take a look at Power Apps. Power Platform. So Power Platform is a way to build applications or APIs or anything using kind of a visual drag and drop editor, which is kind of neat, especially for people who don't really code, I suppose. Oh, why did this bring me to a different page? Nope. Let's go back here. Take an online course. Something's different because I just did this not too long ago. Static apps, logic apps, blah, 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 app dynamics, no. Oh, well. Let's go to build an app. Let's see where this brings us. Because I don't remember this being part of the deal. I'm going to go ahead and hit sign in. I would hope it has me signed in already. There we go. I'm going to stumble through this a little bit. Canvas app from blank. Because really all we want to do is we're going to, let's see, 20.03. Locations, characters, I can't do that. 2003. Found challenges 2, format. No. Maybe Power Apps is not what I'm thinking of. Make your own Canvas app. No. Portal from blank. Model driven app. Let's click on create and see what it does. Start from data. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it was. What did I create then? Power Automate? No, Power Automate is Microsoft Flow. That's kind of like an if this then that, which really I guess that's what Power Apps is. Start from data. It's common data service. Let's click on this and see what it gives us. So what I'm trying to do is I want to find a way that we can create just like an API endpoint or something, HTTP trigger of some kind. So workflow? Flows? No, that's actually some of my personal flows. I don't actually know what a lot of this stuff is. This is interesting. Power Automate? No, Power Automate is our thing. Power Apps I thought is what we're looking for. I might have to skip this last part of it because I don't know where I was before when I built this. New app. Let's try model driven. Database found. Create new environment. 30-day trial. No, I don't really need to do that. We might have to take a rain check on that last one. On this Power Apps thing, because I'm not sure that I know exactly what I'm looking for right now, if I'm being entirely honest. Let's see. Flow. Doesn't do anything. It doesn't give me what I'm interested in. Sure, workflow. Logic apps. That is what I was thinking of, not Power Platform. Logic app. All right, here we go. Get rid of those. I don't need these tabs anymore. Yeah, lead page, go away. All right, pay-as-you-go resource group. We're going to pick the same resource group. Logic app name, we'll do 20.03. Can I do dots? I could do dots. Do cloud challenges logic app. All right. Central service environment. I don't know what that means. Log analytics. I don't want to log anything out of here. Log analytics, if you turn this on, you can do like console.logout and it'll capture it in this thing called log analytics, which if you've ever used APS is kind of like CloudWatch, where you can go through and you can scroll through your logs and find stuff. It's pretty cool. And it uses a query language called KQL, Custo, I think, if I recall. And with that, it's pretty powerful. It's kind of SQL-esque as far as the querying goes, but it lets you do some pretty cool stuff. One of the things that we were using when I was testing out some things at work is I was logging out just raw JSON messages into just a generic text field. And then you can use Custo to parse out the JSON into individual fields inside of your log component. So this way you can search through them individually. It was pretty neat. So this is all it looks like this neat. So review and create. And it's validating. Up here you can see it is validating. Let me zoom in here a little bit too. All right, it's done validating. Let's go ahead and click create. And we have another deployment. So one that yep, this thing is still going. Man, I'm glad I decided to duck off and do something else. We've been sitting here waiting for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes with nothing happening. Nice thing about API management is once you deploy it, you only have to do it once, and then you could hook up all your backend services to it. Empty workflow. Okay, so this is here. Microsoft.empty workflow. Let's go to resource. I think this is my Logic app. Okay, here we go. Logic Apps Designer. This is what I was thinking of, not Power Platform. So my mistake, chat. Viewers, I apologize. So what's neat about this Logic app, and this is kind of like what Microsoft Flow is, or if you're familiar with If This Then That, you have this like visual workflow like tool, canvas, I guess, if you will. And then you have all these different events and triggers that you can use to like kick off the flow. So one of the ones that we're going to do is, do we need to do recurrence files uploaded at TP server? I mean, this is only a couple of examples. But one of the ones you get is HTTP request is received. And this is where you could build like an API using this thing. So are you all generally have to save? We're not going to go ahead and add a JSON body because we're just going to be, let's see, add new method. We'll just do get. We don't need to post anything here. So we'll do new step. Let's see. So when a trigger is received, I'm going to zoom out a little bit because this is kind of tight. Oh, actually, I can zoom out just in here. It's nice. So when an HTTP request is received, we want to do something. We can invoke another REST API. Let's see what else we got here. I just want to return something. Let's see. HTTP. Oh, I saw a response. There you go, response. So group response, status code, body. What should we put in the body? We'll just say, got it. Very basic. Nothing. Because we just want to test things out, right? We want to prove that this stuff works. You can see that inside of this request, you can actually create a JSON schema. So this, okay, iTunes has decided to play Destiny music, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but it's just interested. God Bleak, this is not the Discord bot. I think I know who you are, but no, this is not the Discord bot. So I'm doing something a little bit different today, where inside of our Discord we're doing these community cloud challenge things, and I'm going through the one that we just launched this week. The Discord bot's kind of been tabled for a little bit. Might get to it by the end of the stream. I'm not sure. Yeah, so we'll try. Yeah, you create a schema. You can do different methods and stuff in here. I think you would create a different a different logic app or a different workflow for each one of the different methods you want. But we just want to return the 200 and say we got it. Okay. So let's go ahead and save this. Now it's playing Devil May Cry music. All right, so that is saved. My API management is still in progress. It's taking forever. All right, so let's go back to where we were before. Let's see if we can get that URL that's on there and test this thing out at least. So if I go into Logic App Designer, let's see this URL we got here. So this is the URL that it generated for us. Let's go over to Postman and just issue a GET to this. Send. Got it. Simple as that. So you can see you could do a whole bunch of other interesting things with this too. So like if you wanted to like take a message and drop it onto a queue, or if you wanted to save it to a file or something along those lines, you could do that. But this is just a very, very basic way of saying like, hey, you can get this, you can take the message you got, do something with it, and then return a response. Which really that's kind of what an API is. It's just an interface. It's saying like, hey, a lot of APIs, they could just be simply like proxying requests off to a database to save it. So you're sending data up to it, validating it, saving it off to the database, and when you do GET requests, you're just requesting information back from that database. Where all the core business logic and everything, all the main stuff kind of happens client side. Nothing wrong with that. That works just fine. So we've got 2 out of our 3 things done. Now comes the fun one, which is a lot of what I do throughout the day. So we're going to build an ASP.NET Core web application using .NET. So let's go ahead and pick our template, click Next. We're going to do, let's see, P repos. Let's see, what was my path here? Because I'm going to save this all alongside here. Explorer. I actually think we're going to create another one in there. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's do 20.03.2. Azure API. I hope this creates the folder. I always forget when I'm doing this whether it's going to create the folder and drop it in there, or if I got to create it manually. I think it creates the folder for the solution. All right, I'm going to pick empty. There's a bunch of different templates you can pick here for your application you're building. API would be the most logical one to pick, but I'm going to go empty so I can build it from scratch. I don't care about HTTPS because normally HTTPS would be handled by some kind of front-end proxy, whether that's I've used Nginx a lot to do reverse proxies, but in this case we're going to use that API management, or we're going to drop this into an app service, which is part of Azure's App Service Fabric. I don't remember what it's called, but it automatically containerizes this and hosts it for us, so we don't have to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure, and gives us a whole lot of other neat features, cool things we can do with it. So empty. We're going to Core 3.1 is, I think, the latest one, so let's go ahead and click Create. Yeah, it did create that folder for us, so cool. What I wanted. This thing is still doing its thing. Man, how long has this been already? 20 minutes? Stupid. All right, so this is what it created for us. It's very, very basic template of an application. So you can see program.cs is where this main starter, like the entry point is. Oh, that namespace is terrible. I didn't realize it was going to create a namespace that bad. And I'm not sure that I know how to change it. Package ID, debug. Root namespace. We're going to have to change some things here because I don't like the way that this namespace looks. I'm not willing to see that in every single one of my files that I do. So let's change this to 3.2.Azure API. That's a little bit better. Get rid of those underscores. And then let's take this and replace this. I'm going to generate a new file and see if that helps us too. I noticed, interestingly enough, it added an underscore beforehand. I don't even know that I can have a number to start off a namespace. It's not complaining, so. Namespace can not be directly. I'm guessing it's gonna. Yeah, it's complaining about that. Azure API. We'll just say Brian Azure API. That's better. Namespace is the top level way that the application, I guess, recognizes itself. So everything inside of the application has a specific namespace. Ours, we just changed to Brian Azure API. So let's build this thing. And if you look at, I can zoom in on here too. I don't know that I could zoom the whole window though. I can zoom the code. I know that I could zoom the window. So if I do output, you can see build 1 succeeded. So we did build. Let's try and create a folder here. I'm going to create a folder for controllers. And folder. Controllers are going to hold most of the main core logic of the application. And then the startup is just going to proxy, or the startup is where we configure like the API itself. It's just going to proxy messages off to the controllers. We're running into trouble though, because I'm not sure that I know how to. Well, we'll figure it out. We figure stuff out as we go. All right, so we'll name this. I don't know. What do we want to frame this API around? Users is an obvious one. Users is something I've always kind of worked with as like a base starting ground. Orders, you could do orders. We could do orders. Do like invoices. Invoices and line items on invoices. We'll just go accounts and users. Accounts is easier, so I'll do accounts controller. And we're going to make this inherit from API controller. Invoices. Okay, do invoices. Let's see. Find install latest version. So I got to, actually I don't got to do that again. I realize sometimes I go a little bit too fast because I do the stuff on a daily basis, but you can see there's red squigglies underneath here, right? So if I do control period, it doesn't give me the option now, but what this is going to do, what control period in Visual Studio does is it gives you suggestions on ways that it could possibly fix your code. So API controller is an object that's not part of any of the dependencies that I have added into this project. So by doing that, it suggested, hey, Visual Studio is like, hey, I should reach out to NuGet, which if you're familiar from JavaScript world, NuGet is like NPM. It's very, very similar. It says, hey, I should reach out to NuGet and go find a package that has API controller inside of it. In this case, it was this system.web.htp. So you can see under my dependencies now, I have under packages this ASP.NET or ASP.NET Web API Core. This is the package that was just installed when I did that control period and hit enter. So anyway, okay. So Godbleak asked for invoices. So we're going to delete our accounts controller. And we're going to go ahead and add a new class, and we'll make that invoices controller. All right, so we're going to inherit from API controller. So now this is an example. Here, I can show you where this control period goes. So now we have red squigglies here. Red squigglies means Visual Studio sees a problem here. So if I control enter, it's giving me some suggestions. So either I can change the whole, I can inherit the entire namespace, which just looks silly in an application, or you can add it to a using statement, which again, if you're familiar with JavaScript, it's where you do the const package equals require and then the name of your package. Using system.web.http is saying this is the namespace library you want to use to recognize API controller. So, okay, cool, that's done. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a new controller method. So we'll do public, let's see, HTTP action result, which is what we're going to return from here, and we're going to say get invoices. How about that? So Web API does some pretty interesting things where it will automatically try and map out, like, because you have invoices controller, I know that invoices is probably the path that you want to take with your API, so it's going to try and make that assumption. If you have like a method in here that starts with get, it's just going to assume that any kind of request that comes into this controller that's a get HTTP method, it's going to try and map it to that. Now, what I like to do, just to be a little more explicit, is I'm going to say my route prefix on here is going to be invoices. So when it comes in, it's going to say, it's going to look for this specifically. I've just explicitly told it invoices belongs to this one. And then same thing here. I don't need to add a route to it because I'm not going to have anything after that. But I want this to be an HTTP get. Okay. So, and now this thing's red squigglies because it's saying get invoices is not all code paths return a value. You're telling Visual Studio, .NET, C#, whatever, that you expect this method to return an object that's an IHTTP action result. So we have to return something. So for now, I'm just going to return OK, which is one of those IHTTP action results. And now you can see my red squigglies go away. So if I did this right, and if I don't have to do any kind of additional setup in my startup file, I should be able to hit this invoices controller. I should be able to do forward invoices and then just get an OK response, which is fine. Actually, you know what? We'll just, same thing. Got it. Return a string inside of there. So this should return a string, a message in the body of the response that says, got it. Let's go ahead and start this up. This is IIS Express. I don't know that I want to do that. Old school .NET framework applications, you have to use IIS Express to host them. The newer .NET Core stuff is definitely more along the lines of something like JavaScript and all that fun stuff. Yeah, see, it's going to open something like that. I don't want that. But it'll just run inside of its own little executable. Or I guess if you compiled it into Linux or Mac, it'd be a binary, but executable is a binary. Let's change that to, I think we can click there, play. Yeah, see, it runs it inside of an executable. And even though this popped up another window, when you're doing this in, see, I hate that it does that. When you're doing this inside of like VS Code, the terminal on the right-hand side, let's see, is technically just a command line. I do mine on the right-hand side right now. We have it on the bottom. This is just a command line terminal, and it's executing the same thing in there. It's just instead of bringing up another window, it's doing it inside of the application, which is a little bit nicer. But if you're doing anything with C# or .NET, Visual Studio is definitely the way to go. I used to try and like kind of use VS Code for everything because I really do like VS Code, but I guess I come to realize it's like trying to use a drill to hammer a nail into the wall. It's like, yeah, the drill's a cool tool, but it's not designed for that. And not to say that VS Code's not designed for it, but the hammer is a better tool for the job. So, you know, just use whatever you can. Use whatever is going to make your life easier. In this case, it's going to be this. So now, let's see. Do we have our now listening localhost 5000? You can see right here. So that's the base URL that we're going to hit. So let's go over to Postman and let's create a new tab. And I'm not typing anything. HTTP localhost 5000 and localhost 5000, and we'll do API. I don't know if I have to do API. Let's try invoices. Could not get any response. Let's try API/invoices. I could spell. Oh, 500. Hold on. 000. Not enough zeros. Let's see. Invoices. Try just the top level first. 404 not found. Okay, I got a not found. So at least we're getting something. Let's try API/invoices. Not found. Okay, so I probably have to map something in here to tell it which controllers to load or something along those lines. And unfortunately, I don't know how to do that off the top of my head. let's see, map get. So if I get / it should return hello world. It's kind of silly. I don't want to do that, but let's, for the sake of argument, there we go. So let's go and look up how to map these up. Deployment is underway. Hey, thanks Azure. You're taking your nice sweet time with that. .NET Core. Let's see, ASP.NET Core map controllers. Routing to controller actions. There you go, right here. That's what I'm looking for, and I have seen that before. So this looks like this. I think this is what we need to put in here. So use endpoints. Let's comment this out, and let's go ahead and post that in there. This is underlined in purple, and this is underlined in green, because it's basically complaining and saying, hey, you made changes while the application is running. I'm not going to do anything with this. So let's go ahead and stop the API. Why are you still complaining? Use MVC. Yeah, I know. Endpoint routing is off. Maybe I need to get rid of that too. Still not liking that. To continue to use MVC, please set MVC options. Enable endpoint routing. It was false inside of configure services. Let me see. Well, what did it say? MVC options dot enable endpoint routing. Okay. Look up how to do that. In your configure, I think yep, that's in configure. Let's look up that message. Actually, let's control dot, see what it does. No, it doesn't give me anything. Set MVC, can you set MVC options dot enable endpoint routing? This is a big part of software development. Google, find stuff. Let's see if we can search for endpoint routing. Endpoint routing. Endpoint routing. While it's still possible to use MVC or use router or Trio, we recommend that every application migrate to endpoint routing if possible. Is that what I did? I'm still using MVC. So how do we do this? Use endpoint routing. Point routing overview. It's made up of a pair of middleware created by app.useRouting and app.useEndpoints.app.use. App.useRouting marks the position in the middleware pipeline. Okay, let's give me an example. Typical configure. Use endpoints, map controllers. Okay, so maybe it's map controllers that I need instead. It's been a while since I've written a core thing. So use endpoints. Executes, mapping of the endpoints goes here. So let's try and do our map controllers here. Endpoints.mapget, see. Shortcuts worth noting. Control K, and you hold Control while you do this. Control KC will comment out. You can modify those. That's you can modify those things in Visual Studio settings, but I just leave with the defaults. I'm usually a fan of the Control / to comment things out. Let's go ahead and start this up now and try it. I probably should have gone with that API template. Postman. That's going to get a not found, I'm sure. Could not get a response. Could not get a response. Yep, something broke. Unable to find required services. Please add all required services to Service collection. So I'm missing something here. You should invoke services. No, that's not mine. iService collection.add controllers. Inside. Oh, someone did make the suggestion that it's right there. Let's Google that and see what that looks like. Services.add razor pages. So if I do services.add controllers, no red squigglies. Good sign. Let's go ahead and start this guy back up. We're running already. Hold on. No errors. Not found. Okay. Invoices. Not found. Let's try API invoices. Come on, what's going on here? I just got an email that says that Azure thing is ready. So we're going to keep grinding on this, and then we'll try and wire everything up, hopefully soon. I don't need that. I don't need identity or any of that stuff. Configure services. Here's a decorator, I think. Hold on a second. ASP.NET Core controller example. Even though I'm inheriting from API controller, I want to say there's a decorator that needs to be added on top of the actual controller itself. No, not a context. Startup. Add controllers, map controllers. So that all looks exactly what I want to. I'm not using authorization. I'm not using HTTPS redirection. Postman. Where's the full controller? API controller. Controller base are the ones I want to map. I want to inherit from. Okay, so let's add that guy there, and let's do controller base. So if you missed it earlier, oh, let's stop this. So we got red squiggly. So I'm going to do control period, and now it's going to give me the recommendation of use ASP.NET Core MVC or ASP.NET Core.MVC. Click on that, install that. Okay. Why are you red squiggling now then? Oh, because it sees there's two here. Can we get rid of this? Okay, now my red squigglies go away. For those of you who wanted to see why it's complaining, it's saying that I have a namespace of route prefix, or not route prefix, HTTP GET and this OK in both system.web.http as well as this. So if you look at the suggestions, it's going to say, hey, you should explicitly say, I want to use this full namespace. Now, we don't really need this web.http anymore since we're using the core versions. So I got rid of that. And yeah, we're up and running. Maybe not. What do you want? let's look at that controller again. Items controller, task I action result. Let's try that. There we go. Okay. Okay. Circling back, IHTTP action result and route prefix are part of the .NET framework versions of these APIs, of these controllers. That's the stuff that I work on most on a day-to-day basis, so all right. Close that out. I don't want to see you. Oh, you know what one of the other things we're going to do is there's a way that you can tell, let's see, launch settings. Launch settings. See, now it's saying launch browser is true. I'm getting rid of this launch browser stuff because since we're using an API, I don't care about the launch browser. I don't care about the browser launching at all. I just want it to start. And we're actually going to change this to change that. I think that's what's controlling this up here. Yeah, there we go. That looks a little cleaner. So let's start this guy back up again. No complaints. Same thing. Let's try invoices. There we go. Got it. That was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So, anyway, that's to get invoices. Let's add some dummy data here. How about that? So let's just to give an example of how some of these APIs work. I like working on .NET APIs. Honestly, I really do. I know it's kind of thought of as like a old style way thing of doing whatever, but I frankly enjoy it. I think Microsoft has done a pretty good job, especially with .NET Core. So let's do models. Let's create an API model. So a model is just a way of defining your data. So we'll say invoice class. What are some common fields on an invoice? Let's do. Let's see. Let's do public int ID get set. So what I'm doing here is I'm declaring the invoice is our object that we're working with, and an ID is the property on that object. So you could do invoice.id equals whatever. There are exceptions to like anonymous types, but or anonymous objects, but for the most part, and in languages like .NET, you kind of have to explicitly define everything. So invoice can have an ID, public date time. Oh, and the get set just means like I can access it and quickly get and set it. Set the value of it. So we want date time, and we'll do invoice date. Now you notice in the front of this, I put a question mark in front of date time. This flags this I guess it'd be this type as being nullable, which means I can have a date time there or I can have null. Let's see, public. What other common things come on an invoice? We got invoice ID, we got invoice date, we got double could be the amount due. And that's probably enough. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do JSON property. No, actually, I think this will probably be fine the way that it is. All right, so there's our invoice. We've only got 3 fields, but good enough. Actually, no, we're going to do public list of line items. You see line items. Actually, we got to get rid of line items because it's only one. So we have a list of one type, which is a line item. That has a red squiggly because it doesn't exist, but I can do that. It says generate class line item a new file. So do that. See, I have line item over here, and we can do public. Let's see, int. We'll do string, and we'll do item name, and we'll do public double. Amount get set, and we'll do how about public int quantity. Now there's always going to be a quantity, so really there's always going to be a quantity. Always going to be that. So describing these things, string is a given. String does not require a question mark in the front of it because a string field can be is already nullable, so you don't have to set that. Double is a way of defining I want fractions of a number. An integer is just that. It's an integer. It's a whole number. So that's, I think, sufficient there. All right, so those are, we defined our models. I could add a data store of some kind, but I don't think I'm going to. So let's, for our get invoices, we'll do, we're just going to create some of the stuff on the fly. So in a perfect world, or in a normal API, what you do is you hook up, you'd hook this up to some kind of data set or data store, so it would, you query the data, look for it, whatever, return it back. So we're just going to create some, maybe 2 invoices with 2 line items each. So we'll do, this is a little heavy for my taste right now, so I'm going to skip this song. It's heavy. Breaking Benjamin is always good. So we'll do list invoice. Actually, I need to do, I can do var. So we're creating an empty list of invoice. Even though this is all within the same application, I haven't actually told the invoice controller about the models. Oh, another thing worth noting. Inside of models, you'll notice these ones I created it already added .models as the suffix of the namespace because it looks to the folder that they're actually stored in. So that's pretty cool. So, but because this is in the controller's namespace, it doesn't know about the model's namespace. So that's why this thing has got a red squiggly. So we'll hit control period, and it gives me the suggestion of let's add a using statement for the .models namespace. So enter that. Red squiggly for that one goes away. The top one is complaining because we're not returning anything yet. So invoices, we'll do invoices.add. We're going to add a new invoice. We're just going to do all this in line. So we're adding a new invoice into this list. We will say the ID equals 1. We will say the date time, invoice date equals date time.now, which is just now. And we'll do amount due equals 123.45, whatever. And we will also do inline, we'll say items equals new list, line item. And you see I can add these directly in, so I can do a new line item. Let's see. What do we do? Name, item name equals, what kind of shop are we building here? What am I selling? What have I bought recently? So what do I got around? How about these things? Seltzer waters. Pretty good, actually. And I've got 2 here, interestingly enough. I have a black cherry seltzer water. So let's do black cherry. Let's do black cherry. And we will, for amount, we will do, I've got $123 in seltzer water. That's a lot of seltzer water. But we will do, I don't know, $1. And for quantity, we will do 5. And actually, we're going to do something else pretty neat here. We have 1 item, so we're going to copy that and just add a comma there to add another item into our list here. And let's see here, $1. What am I the one I got here? I got lime, so we'll do lime. So we're more or less just going to copy a lot of this stuff over. So that is 1 invoice that we've added so far, and we've done everything kind of in line. So we've got the new invoice. We're defining those top values for those top properties. We're also in line for items. We're creating a new list of items, and we're going to go ahead and just create those line items off the cuff right there. Now I'm going to go ahead back over to my line item, and I'm going to add something here for public double total. And I'm going to add a getter here, but I'm not going to add a setter. And the reason why is because let me fix the formatting of this here a little bit. What I'm basically doing is I'm saying I only want to get something out of this. So for the get, I'm going to return, let's see, amount times quantity. I don't even know what this is, but based on how it started, we're going to go ahead and skip this. No, I don't want that. No, too heavy. That's better. All right, why are you complaining? Cannot convert double to double. Explicit conversion. So because this needs an amount, which I guess we can probably change that to just regular. Nah, it's fine. We could do if amount not equal null, return double amount times quantity. Return 0.00. Okay, so what we're doing here is I'm inline saying I have this field called total. This should be a grand total of the amount and quantity multiplied together. Now, I don't ever want to actually set this field. I only want to get something out of it. And I want to get 0 if there is no amount, because amount technically is nullable, so I have to add a check here. So I'm saying if the amount is null, just return 0. Otherwise, I'm going to take the amount here and I'm going to cast it to a double, basically assuming that it has a value, which we've already checked that it does from this conditional here. And I'm going to multiply that times the quantity. Now, because I don't have a question mark next to integer, quantity will default to 0. Little nuances of the language. So I don't actually need to specify total here. It's going to be calculated automatically for me, or it should. So anyway, moving on here. So we got one invoice. Let's go ahead and copy this. We'll make some small tweaks to this. Copy, paste that in there. Let's see. New invoice. This actually is going to be $10. We'll make that amount due. You could do the same thing with amount due, or if you wanted to, you can calculate out the items that are below it and return that. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and leave that just the way that it is. Datetime.now .add days. We're going to go ahead and add some days to this. We'll do -2. Say this invoice was dated from 2 days ago. Let's change the ID to 2. Okay. And see, now it's still complaining this because it wants something back. So we're going to return the invoices, but we're going to return that as JSON. So if I remember this right, I can return JSON. Nope, apparently not. There's a different way to do it in this version, but we'll just return OK. It should still convert it to JSON. If you have JSON, you can set specific ways that the engine is going to handle JSON. So like if you have a value that is null, it could just not even return it. It'll just ignore it. One of the things that I did, that because I'm like a stickler for, I try and be a stickler for attention to details, is all my properties are alphabetically sorted when they're returned through some of my APIs that I built at work because I'm weird. Okay, so in our get invoices call, we are going to, this kind of should do it. So let's go ahead and start this up. And we'll try and fire this off and see what happens. API is up. Let's go ahead and fire off that call from Postman. And there you go. So we have the invoice date, the amount due we specified. Here's the items. Here you can also see we multiplied the amount is 1, quantity is 5, so the total was automatically calculated to 5. And here's this. Now you'll notice something interesting. This actually appended onto this date time. It added 06:00, which is actually my offset from UTC, which is pretty cool. So it's saying that 21:49, which right now is coming on about 10 o'clock here. It's saying that time that was returned is 6 hours off from UTC. Which is cool because it kind of handles that automatically. That's ISO 8601, I think, is the standard. So yeah, anyway, so here we go. We got our API. Now that's done, I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we're going to commit our changes. You can see Visual Studio has a nice kind of built-in source control manager thingy. So we will say built out .NET Core API. And let's go ahead and commit that. Permission denied. I want to ignore that. Hold on. Our get ignore is not set up the way that it should be. So let's go ahead and hold on a second. It might actually be trying to do this in its own repository, which I don't want. So show you how to fix that real quick. If we go into here, we have .vs. I don't see .get though. But we're going to ignore .vs. So let's go ahead inside of here. See, I have my new folder there. We're going to create a get ignore. And we're going to say, This one's got binaries already. Actually, it probably should be doing it in here. Let's drag that into there. And we'll do .vs we're going to ignore. We're going to ignore the bin folder we don't need. Don't think the obj folder we need either. Go ahead and save that, make sure those get grayed out, which they do. So that means I'm ignoring those files because I don't need them in my thing that I'm working on. All right, so let's do added .NET Core API. Push that up. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh our repository, make sure we got it in. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Now, API management is done. We're still going to save that for last, though. I'm going to go over to App Services. So what I'm going to deploy now is one of those things I was talking about earlier in my stream is a serverless way of doing things. So what this does is this containerizes the application, puts it in its own little isolated space, and handles all of the heavy lifting of the underlying operating system and infrastructure, so you don't have to manage any of that stuff, which is really cool. So, oh yeah, I forgot. Functions are technically considered part of the app services umbrellas, but we're going to go ahead and add a new one. And we're going to add a web app. So this is what I want. Resource group, we're going to select the same resource group. Web app name, we'll do, let's see, PI, a dot is, of course it is. There you go. Azure API. So you see this little green checkbox over here. This needs to be unique because .Azure Websites is going to be the default host name it's going to add it to, so that's got to be completely separate. Okay, so that's done. Region's fine. Operating system, select a runtime stack. We're going to do .NET Core. It selected Linux for us automatically because .NET Core can actually run in Linux, which is pretty cool. Linux plan. Okay, so the app service plan is a collection of resources that is assigned to a. Let me see if I can remember this right. Here, let's look it up. Filter basin. No, it's not what I was looking for. It's a group of resources, compute resources that are used for your applications. So it looks like this app service plan is being created for us automatically based on the resource group that we've selected up here. Let's change size. I want to get to the smallest thing possible so I don't get charged for this. Dev test, F1, free. Hey, free. 60 minutes per day of compute. So this should shut down automatically, which is fine. That's exactly what I want to do. All right, so let's go ahead and apply this. It's free. It's for me. Monitoring. Enable App Insight monitoring. Same thing. If you log out or something, you could have App Insights. Like earlier, we talked about log insights. App Insights does the logging, but it also gathers other metrics and things about your application. So one of the neat things that you can see with App Insights is which of your API endpoints are actually being used, how much memory they use, how long they take to respond. There's a lot of cool, different nifty things you can do in there. It's not supported in the resource group, so it's like, no, you can't do it anyway, and I really don't care because I'm not going to. Next, tags. Tags are a way for you to just add random tags to different resources within Azure. These could be anything. One of the things we do at work with tags is if somebody is kind of the owner of a specific resource in Azure, we'll tag it with our name. So this way, when billing comes around and says, hey, why are we getting charged for this? We know who to go to talk about. It's not a perfect system, but there's not a whole lot of us, so that's fine. Review and create. So it's going to go and check all my settings. And you can see on the bottom here, not valid according to this broke. Linux workers are not available in resource group. Maybe let's try a different region. Not finding your app service plan. Find a different region. Let's try US East. And let's change this to free again. think I can skip all that stuff. It didn't complain when I changed to US East or East US. Getting in AWS, it's US East, they say. So, but you can see on the bottom here, I was going to point out that you can download a template for automation here. So same thing, if you wanted to be this part of like a DevOps pipeline, you can click on download a template and then include that in your repository, and it'll check that whenever you want to launch, whenever you want to deploy out new code. So go ahead and click create, initializing deployment. Now, while this is going, I hope this doesn't take very long, but because our API management is done, let's go ahead and head over there. All right, so you can see my gateway URL is this BrianMMChat cloudchallenges.azureapi.net. This is kind of the entry point to the whole thing. Under my APIs section here, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do here, but it's giving me a couple of like quick start. Okay, I don't know why I got dropped back here. Go here, let's go to this resource again. APIs. Okay, it gives you a couple of options and ways that you can deploy out APIs. So we're going to add an API. We're going to say we want to add a function app, which is this our function app we displayed earlier. Go ahead and browse for that. Function app. Select that guy. Here's our function that we have defined within that app. Go ahead and click select. It's going to pre-fill all this stuff out for us, which is fine by me. Click create. Deployment still in progress. So, and I should have just taken the initiative to multitask earlier. All right, so here is our Cloud Challenges 1, get and post, which they both technically did the same thing. But that should work now. Let's take a look at settings and see what we got here. Okay, so there is the base URL. This is what we should be able to hit, and it's using HTTPS. I don't think there's anything else we need to do in here, and it should automatically wire. I think it automatically wires up all the backend authentication it needs to access that specific function. And let's save. Do I need to publish this? Publisher portal, legacy, developer portal. Let's just try and hit it. Why not? Postman, new tab. Resource not found. I think I have to publish this somehow. Let's see. Something went wrong. Unable to complete your operation this time. Great. I don't even know what this is. That is not what I'm looking for. I want to say there was a way that I need to publish a version out of this, but I don't remember how to do it. Quick start. Yeah, I said this set up import demos, protect your APIs, use revisions for non-breaking changes, use versions for breaking changes. I have no idea what any of this is. I'm being entirely honest. I've seen some of this stuff before, but I'm not sure why I'm seeing it now. Oh, here we go. That's why. Okay, so the 2003 Cloud Challenge is the base API for the whole thing. However, my particular route inside of here is actually Cloud Challenge's Azure API. So this is the URL I think we need to use. I don't think I had that earlier. Nope, I didn't. All right, send. Please include a subscription key when making. I don't want a subscription key in here. So let's go ahead and go to settings. The way that I can say subscription required. Nope, I don't need no subscription. Save it. So you can see, even though my API or my Azure Functions doesn't have any kind of authentication system in it, you could set up all your authentication on this layer here, which is really ideal because if you have a bunch of different backend services, you'd want to kind of all control everything from here. All right, I don't care about that. Okay, so that's saved. We removed the subscription requirement. Let's go ahead and send that again. Your month is, hey, there you go. So this is the API front end for our Azure function. All right, so 1 out of 3 is done. Let's go ahead and add another API. We're going to add our logic app. Select it. There's our logic app. Don't API URL suffix. Let's go ahead and just add that in there just to be on the safe side. Settings, I think, do I have to uncheck that? No, I don't want no subscription key. Let's save that. See, I think Azure has this, Azure Functions has where you can define which, different routes, different functions, different methods within the API. The logic app doesn't, so let's see. Manual path invoke. So this is the URL we want. It's interesting that it says manual path invoke. Not sure why it added that like that, but oh well. All right, so let's go ahead and copy that request URL. Go over here, new tab, and send. Got it. All right, so got it. You remember that was the message that we put inside of our logic app. 2 out of 3 done. Pretty good. I'm doing this for an hour and a half, and we're pretty much almost there. I see I don't see anything here, so it's like our web app was published properly. So we have set up this web app, and you can see we have a URL here. So let's go ahead and copy this and go ahead and paste this here. Make sure that we get something. Maybe. Yeah, hey .NET Core developers, your app service is up and running. Take time to deploy your code. All right, there is a way that you can hook this up. Actually, I think directly into a GitHub thing somehow. Let's see if I remember how to do this. API management is listed right there, so that's cool. I'll try that. We're going to take a look there in a little bit, see if we can just wire everything up there. Deployment slots, deployment center. Here we go. So we can do continuous deployment directly in here. Let's do GitHub. Authorize. It's gonna ask me to sign. Oh, maybe I don't need to. If I never got to enter my password or anything, I'm gonna step away. But no, this looks like this is gonna work fine. So let's go ahead and authorize the app service. Oh, see, now there's my password. Be right back in 1 moment. I frankly don't even know my password. I store everything in LastPass. So, GitHub. Oh, I don't want to log in. All right, so we signed in. So you can see here's my GitHub ID. Let's go ahead and continue. Build the service. Let's see. Use app service as the build server. Yeah, let's try that. Azure pipelines. Now I know how to use Azure DevOps to do these things, but we're gonna, I think, tackle Azure DevOps in another mission, another week. Go through some DevOps stuff with Azure. So we're gonna use whatever the built-in thing is. Go ahead and continue. Organization, me. Cloud challenges, branch, master, continue. I do GitHub Actions. I wanted to choose. Did I pick the wrong thing? I picked that. Hit next. That's fine. GitHub. I guess hopefully it's gonna hook in and do something with GitHub Actions because I didn't set that up. Finish. Hopefully my project doesn't need to be on top. I'm hoping that it lets me say what solution or project that I want to pick to do this. Let's see what this does. And if this works, then what I think I'm going to try doing is make a small change to the API, maybe add another route or something. You can add like a customer's route to it, and we'll try and return that back then as well. This is new for me. I haven't done any of this yet, so I don't know what's going to happen here. Unlike being surprised. Okay, so it's doing something. Shows a date, says it's pending. Running Oryx build. Okay. Taken King is building my my API. Failed. Yeah, I would have expected so. I'm wondering if it needs that project to be at the root. Browse. Oh, it's not it. .NET version 3.1 is unsupported. Are you serious? Didn't ask me if I was using .NET 3.1. Supported versions. Okay, so I can't build automatically. Whatever. We're not going to do this then. But what I might be able to do is just upload my thing manually. Upgrade to display state. Okay, so I can't have slots. What slots are, and I worked a little bit with them, is there a way that you can add new versions of your code up into the app service platform, test it, and then swap your slots? It's a way of doing blue-green deployment. Can I upload my own thing then? That's what I need to figure out how to do. Yeah, get rid of that. Disconnecting your deployment. I'd started playing the same music over again. I don't know that's a bad thing, honestly. Figure local get FTP. Use an FTP connection to access. I don't like that. Maybe we will. Endpoint. Credentials, user credentials. User credentials defined by you can be used with all the apps which you have access. FTP, local get, web deploy. Auto-generated provided for this. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording real quick. Not pause it, but switch off to my handling secrets because I'm going to pull up WinSCP and I got to make sure that it's not accessing any of my private servers or whatever. I use WinSCP for this stuff. Save password. Let's see if this works and connects. Establish. Okay, cool. So let's see here. Switch back. All right, so here's WinSCP. I'm FTP'd into it. Looks like my app service here. Got site www root. Now I have no idea how to build this for Linux. What does publish options give me? Let me see this. Publish, app service. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'm in Visual Studio. All right, backing up here for a second. I right-clicked on the project, and I hit publish. And it brought up this screen here. Now it says start deploy to a folder, IS, Azure, other destination. Let's go ahead and click start here. App service Linux, because it looks like that's what I'm doing. Select existing. Let's create profile. It's going to bug me to sign in. Just fine. Oh, it's going to bump my auth code. Sec. If you don't know what two-factor authentication is, look it up, apply it everywhere. Even if somebody knew passwords to most of my things, you would need my phone in order to actually access anything. So I have all my tokens on there. All right, pay as you go, resource group. Okay, cloud challenge, Azure API, deployment slots. I don't have any deployment slots, so let's just go ahead and click that Azure API app service we created. Click OK. Okay, this is pretty cool. Everything right in line here is pretty similar to our VS Code setup. Let's go ahead and click publish. And I'm going to be kind of pissed if this is like the one that we can't figure out, because this, out of all these things, this was the one I was probably most excited for. Great. Cannot connect to remote computer. Cannot connect to remote computer. Make sure that web deploy is installed. No, it's not, because it's Linux. We will drop this down to .NET 4.3.0. Oh, save. See if this breaks anything. Yeah. Oh no, that didn't. Oh, there we go. Break all the things. Let's build this and make sure it builds. Look at our output. Build started. Unsucceeded. Okay, so I dropped this down to 3.0 and it's still built properly, so that's good. Let's try and publish this thing out again. Here we go. So let's change our framework to be core O, framework dependent. I don't know what that means. Portable, yeah, sure. Target runtime, be Linux. Minus stuff, no databases. All right, let's save that. Let's try and do this again. See what happens. Just open a random web page. Okay, it says it succeeded. So I guess that would make sense, because let's go ahead and refresh this and see what happens. This is the FTP client. F5. Okay, I got a bunch of stuff in here. There's an execute. Why would there be an executable inside of a Windows VM? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Well, you know what? Let's try and hit our API. So that's there. We should be able to do, like, what do we just do? / invoices? Yeah, so let's try and just replace the front end of this and do / invoices. Yeah, I kind of figured that was going to happen. I would have been shocked if that worked. Let's change our deployment thingy to do something different. I'm going to edit this in target runtime. We're going to make Linux x64. Save that. Let's try and publish this again, see what happens. Succeeded. Refresh that. I have something else here. I am assuming that's the binary. Still nothing. All right. I really don't want to call this thing quits, but I might. Well, so we changed the framework to 3.0, which is, I guess, what they were complaining about in the first place. So maybe let's try let's try and do that web deploy again. I'm going to come over and I'm going to publish all my changes again. Let's see. So we'll do updated dot 2003 for 2020 and 03 for the month. Try this again. Perhaps I should have chosen a Windows 1. Might have published better, I don't know. You know what, if that doesn't work, then maybe we'll just do that. Create a quick create another app service as Windows. I really wanted to do this on Linux because I wanted to see .NET Core like in action. Yeah, it failed again. Why did you fail this time? Curious to see what this looks like now. Refresh you. Still all the same stuff. Great. It doesn't tell me it failed. It just failed. It's nice. I say I'm kind of underwhelmed about that. Like, it broke, but good luck. All right, let's just create another app service. Add. Oh, I saw my web app. I think the Windows ones do actually cost something, so just have to remember to go back and remove it. What do we name this other one? let's 3. Why not? Select a runtime stack. TS. It doesn't even give me that option. Oh, there we go. There's Windows. Interesting that 3.1 is only supported on Linux. Central US. Let's change this to US East. Well, no, actually, let's stick in Central. I'm curious to see if it'll find those this time. Change spec picker. Dev test. Oh, there's a free one for Windows. Cool. I don't really care about anything else here, so let's go ahead and review and create. Downside is this does take a little while to get going again. So we're in kind of hold mode right now until this finishes up. Trying to think if there's anything else I can go over with this entire setup. I guess I can go over to API management and take a look at what integrations they have with web apps. Let's go quick start, or let's see. No, this is wrong. Let's do API management. Guys. And let's scroll over and take a look here. Got app services here. There's our old one that we created. So this might actually be pretty simple. Just import this in right now, right here like this. We're just waiting right now. Waiting for this thing here to finish. There we go. That was a lot quicker than the first one, I feel like. All right, there you go. So, okay, now that is set up. I don't think we had to make any changes here. So let's go back into Visual Studio and let's create a new published profile. App service, select existing, create profile. As you go, there's that. Here's our Windows one that we created. Still in the deployment slots. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Dependencies currently configured. Add additional services. We don't need that. So let's go ahead and publish and see what happens. I got no response, which actually might be a good sign. Let's go into, let's grab this URL again. It's Azure websites. Let's go into here and replace this out with that. We have an API. Aha, got it. All right, so the API is working. ET is working. All right, so there, now we need to go over to the API management and wire that up, and that'll be the last thing. All right, so I saw it in here. I saw it, API management. API management, cloud challenges, create new API. This is cool, you can publish it directly in here. This is awesome. Use open API specifications. Checked API definition of the app will be used if unchecked wildcard operations will be created in the API management. Okay, so if this is unchecked, it's basically anything that comes from a specific endpoint will then be forwarded off to this API for handling. I like that. App Insights, don't want to do App Insights. Let's go ahead and link API. This is a good session. This was pretty fun, actually. API suffix. Let's just make this API. Or actually, App Service API. Like that. Great. Yeah, see, look at all this stuff. It just took all these default HTTP verbs. It's like it's just going to take them all and just forward them right along. Yep. Get, send everything. So you can see this is kind of like the inside of API management. This is how everything is configured, right? So, and API gateway in AWS is the same thing. So you have like your front end. I want to do some stuff with it in between, and then here's the back end. And the back end here is our API service that we just created. So now if I go to test, we should be able to get our real URL, which is this guy here. And we'd want to put invoices in here too. So let's go ahead and do invoices and send. Access is denied. Oh yeah, we forgot to do that. Settings. Don't need the subscription key. I'm going to figure out how to do this, I think, next time, because I would like to know how to just like create or generate these subscription keys or store them somehow. I'm going to do that next time. So that's been saved. Send. Maybe. Yeah, I unchecked it. Unless is this for each one of these? Ah, there we go. I was just being impatient. Now, another thing interesting to notice is this also has a +0 on it, which means all servers are UTC as they should be. That's why that is different there. But otherwise, everything else here is exactly the same as we had it locally. And now everything is all routed through API Gateway. So if we look at, or not API Gateway, API Management. So let's go to API Management. Just as a really quick recap of what's going on here. So inside of our APIs that we have defined, go to API Management. Just take me there. So inside of our APIs, we have several APIs that we've defined. We have our 2003 Cloud Challenges Logic app. We have the Azure API that was built using the app service. Then we also have the Cloud Challenges, which is the function app that's being hosted. But this kind of is, what you'll notice here is like everything starts with this here, this Brian MM Chat Cloud Challenges Azure API Net. So that one is, this one is, they'll have different subroutes. But what's interesting is you can use one top level URL and then just add your stuff in down underneath too. And I haven't even scratched the surface as far as this API management service. I'm sure there are cool things you can do with it, like rolling upgrades and different revisions and versions of the API. So it really gives you like a lot of control with some stuff. Like one of the things I was interested in doing at work at some point is, since our API is all built in .NET, like old school .NET framework, I'd like to eventually get it over to .NET Core, but in the meantime, we can migrate all of our API access into API management and just start taking pieces of the API and forward it off to different backend services within Azure. So, okay, so 2 hours, not a bad stream. It's actually pretty good. We learned a lot. I learned a lot here. Feel like we did everything I set out to do. Discord bot for Godbleak, if you're still on, we will be doing that again probably in the near future. I might have to kick myself up to 2 streams a week, or at least maybe next week make the next one a little bit shorter with the Azure stuff, and then do another hour with the Discord. I think that's probably going to be the plan. Okay, cool. Thanks for joining. Appreciate your time today, and questions, comments, concerns, I don't know, drop a message in chat. Join up the Discord at brianmm.chat. If you feel like you got any value out of this, tips are always appreciated. You can access the tip link on my Twitch page. Got to add that in different spots, but cool. Everybody have a good night. Bye-bye.